Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Research Showcase. My name is Kinneret, and I'm the lead research community officer on the WMF research team. Welcome to this month's Research Showcase. We're really excited to share with you some very interesting research, the latest research brought by members of our research community that is relevant to the Wikimedia project. For those of you that are joining us live, welcome. And we ask you to ask questions of the speakers in the YouTube chat. We'll be monitoring the channel and passing the questions on to the authors at the end of each presentation. We ask that all attendees please follow the friendly space policy and the universal code of conduct. This month, we don't have any special announcements. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Eli to present this month's speakers.
Thanks, Kinneret. I'm Eli, a researcher here at the Wikimedia Foundation, and I'm glad to introduce the September 2024 Research Showcase. So today's topic is curation of Wikimedia AI datasets, and as you may know, Wikipedia plays an important role in the training of large language models, and at the same time, AI brings many potential applications for helping Wikipedia editors work more efficiently. Today, we'll be hearing about some novel and exciting work around the role of community-driven AI evaluation, how AI tools can be more effectively used for governance, and even how we may mitigate limitations of large language models. Our first project will be presented by Chusheng Kuo, who will present work on supporting community-driven data curation for AI evaluation on Wikipedia through Wikibench. Chusheng is a PhD student in the Human-Computer Interaction Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. His research focuses on transforming the current top-down and centralized approach to AI development towards more community-driven, deliberative, and democratic processes. And to achieve this vision, he develops systems and processes that empower individuals and communities impacted by AI to actively shape its design, evaluation, and use. His research has received Best Paper and Honorable Mention awards at top human-computer interaction conferences, including ACM's Conference on Computer-Human Interaction and the Symposium on User Interface Software and Technology. Our second project and presentation today will be presented by Yufang Ho, joining us to present work on WikiContradict, a benchmark for evaluating LLMs on real-world knowledge conflicts from Wikipedia. Yufang is a research scientist at IBM Research Ireland, and her recent research interests include large language model evaluation, cross-document NLP knowledge and reasoning, and human-centered NLP applications for education and scientific discovery. Yufang has a strong background in discourse processing, computational argumentation, fact-checking, and scholarly document processing. After each talk, we will have about 10 minutes for discussion, and we're happy to take your questions in the YouTube chat. My colleague Miriam will monitor the chat and relay those questions during the Q&A. And with this, let's pass it on to Chusheng.
Thanks, Eli. I will share my screen right now. Cool. Can you all see my screen? Great. Okay.
Yep.
Then I'll get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Zishen, and I'm a PhD student at CMU HCAI. Today, I'm happy to present our paper on Wikibench, a system that supports community-driven data curation for AI evaluation on Wikipedia. This is a collaborative work with a wonderful team, including my advisors, Ken Hosting and Hai Zhu. Today, AI tools are increasingly deployed in community contexts. For example, AI-based content moderation tools have been deployed in online communities such as Wikipedia and Reddit. AI-based decision-making tools have also been adopted by local governments to allocate public resources. However, data sets used to evaluate AI are typically created by developers and data annotators outside a given community. This can cause problems because the ground truth of data labels on tasks such as content moderation can be highly community-specific. As a consequence, evaluating AI systems using data sets created by community outsiders can lead to misleading conclusions about AI performance. For example, prior research has shown that crowdsourced data sets systematically label innocuous phrases in African American English as toxic. If these crowdsourced datasets were used to evaluate content moderation tools in a community that use African American English, they will underestimate how often the tools incorrectly flag innocuous phrases. Therefore, recent work has argued that researchers should explore community-driven approaches to AI data curation. For example, in a position paper, Joe and Gabru argued that AI datasets should draw lessons from archive and library studies, such as the Lesbian History Archives and the Working Class Movement Library, where these community archives are often directly contributed and curated by the communities they're meant to represent, instead of by community outsiders. However, realizing the vision of community-driven AI data curation is challenging. For example, even though a community may share broad norms and values, individual community members may disagree about how specific data points should be labeled. Current crowdsourced datasets tend to handle the disagreements among data annotators after data have already been labeled by, for example, resorting to the majority vote. However, in community contexts, it is crucial that community members have opportunities to understand each other's perspectives and collectively navigate disagreements for consensus building. It is also critical to provide communities with the agency to shape higher-level decisions around data curation beyond labeling individual data points. Finally, given that community members will generally have limited time and attention, it is important to support them in prioritizing their time and efforts. With these challenges in mind, in this paper we ask, how might we empower communities to curate evaluation datasets for AI that impacts them? To answer this question, we present Wikibench, a system that enables communities to collaboratively curate AI datasets while navigating ambiguities and disagreements through discussion. As shown in this figure, community members can use Wikibench to select data points, label data with their individual judgments, and discuss to decide a consensus label. We designed and tested Wikibench on Wikipedia. However, we envision its overall design will be useful across a broad range of community platforms. Overall, this work demonstrates a community-driven approach to AI data curation and makes the following 3 contributions. First, we introduce Wikibench, the first system that supports community-driven curation of AI datasets. Second, we present findings from a field study on Wikipedia to understand how the Wikipedia community used this system in practice. Finally, we propose future directions for systems that aim to further advance community-driven data curation within and beyond the context of Wikipedia. So here's the outline for my presentation. And after giving a brief introduction, we'll now move on to the community context where we investigate our research question. So we conducted our research in the context of Wikipedia for several reasons. First, Wikipedia has a rich history of grassroots engagement in AI design and evaluation. However, while Wikipedia community members are motivated to improve the AI tools they use and are impacted by, there is currently no infrastructure to support them in proactively curating datasets for AI evaluation and improvement. Therefore, our research focus is well aligned with existing interests and motivation among Wikipedia community members. In addition, Wikipedia's well-established norms for collaboration enable us to build upon these norms and bypass the need to introduce entirely new collaboration processes for data curation. And note that we work with the English Wikipedia community as a starting point because different language editions of Wikipedia have different norms. So when I give this talk elsewhere, I usually walk the audience through the next few slides because they may not be familiar with how Wikipedia works. But I assume everyone here already knows Wikipedia very well, so I'll just quickly go over them. Okay, so here's a quick overview for Wikipedia of Wikipedia for people who may not be familiar with its context. Each article on Wikipedia, such as this one about human-computer interaction, has an article page that anyone can edit. And when edit conflict arises, each article has an associate talk page for people to discuss its content. And since Wikipedia allows anyone to edit articles, bad actors can vandalize Wikipedia by making damaging edits with bad faith. As shown on this diff page, which displayed an article before and after an edit, a bad actor added irrelevant information to the article page about HCI. Since tons of edits are made to Wikipedia every day, AI tools are deployed on Wikipedia to help identify vandalism. In particular, a group of Wikipedia community members who self-identify as patrollers will monitor recent changes made to Wikipedia and use AI-based filters to review edits that may be vandalism. However, while Wikipedians heavily rely on these AI filters for content moderation, they currently have limited ways to evaluate these AI tools because of the lack of data sets that can be used for evaluation. To better understand Wikipedia community members' desires for community-driven AI evaluation, we conducted a formative study with them and derived the following 4 design requirements for a system aiming to support this process. These design requirements suggest that the data curation process should be led by the community and follow their established norms. It should also encourage deliberation for consensus building, embed within existing workflows, and be transparent to community members. Now that we have a better understanding of the context, let's see how Wikibench works on Wikipedia. As a reminder, in this context, each data point is an edit made to a Wikipedia article, and each edit has associated labels that specify whether the edit is considered to be damaging to an article and whether the edit is made in good or bad faith. Here's an overview of the data curation process supported by Wikibench. It mainly supports 3 actions. It enables community members to select data points, label data with their individual judgments, and discuss to decide on a consensus label. Here's a more detailed workflow of Wikibench, which supports the 3 main actions through 3 interfaces. The first interface is Wikibench's plugin, which allows community members to select new data points during their regular activities on Wikipedia and label these data points within their workflow. Here's a screenshot of Wikibench's plugin embedded on Wikipedia's diff pages, where Wikipedia patrollers are already reviewing edits. The plugin allows Wikipedia community members to label an edit, specify their confidence level, and add notes if they want to. This design embeds the data curation process into Wikipedia's existing workflow to reduce the duplication of efforts and help curate up-to-date data. If the submitted labels differ from existing labels established through community consensus, the plugin will show a yellow message to encourage discussion. Otherwise, the green message will appear to minimize disruption. The second interface is Wikibench's entity page, which shows the labels of each edit and facilitate discussions and relabeling as needed. Here's a screenshot of Wikibench's entity page for an edit. The left side shows the top half of an entity page, including an edit, its primary label established through community consensus, and a user's individual label. The right side shows the bottom half of an entity page, including the full set of individual labels from different community members and their notes. And similar to Wikipedia articles, the primary label is open to change by any member of the Wikipedia community rather than automatically decided by the majority of individual labels. If Wikipedia community members think a discussion could be helpful, each entity page has a corresponding talk page for deliberation, similar to Wikipedia's established mechanism for article editing. And even if individual disagreements may still exist after discussion, each community member may agree to disagree through their individual labels. The third interface is Wikibench's campaign page, which allows community members to select data points already in the datasets for labeling and discussion, or discuss the overall data curation process. Here's a screenshot of Wikibench's campaign page. The section at the top shows simple visualization to help the community track the data curation process. The section at the bottom includes a table that helps navigate the entire datasets. The buttons above the table allow community members to sort the table and identify data points that may benefit from additional labels or discussion. For example, the Build Consensus button surfaces data points that have high disagreements across community members' individual labels to promote discussion. In addition to the table, this campaign page serves as a living data sheets that provide comprehensive information about the data curation campaign, including the data statement. And similar to Wikipedia articles, the campaign page can be edited by any community members and has an associated talk page for discussion. So back to this overview, we now have a better understanding of how Wikibench supports these three main actions. Finally, let's briefly talk about the study and the highlighted findings. We conducted a field study to understand how Wikipedia community members use Wikibench in the course of their regular activities on Wikipedia. The study started with an onboarding session, lasted for a week for the field study, and concluded with an exit interview. Besides the field study, we also conducted a validation study to understand whether the labels curated using Wikibench truly reflect community consensus. Here's the demographic information of our field study participants, including their self-identified experiences, frequency of patrolling edits, registration year, edit counts on English Wikipedia, and geographic location. As you can see, our study participants come from diverse backgrounds, but they all self-identify as Wikipedia patrollers. We summarize our study results in three categories. First, through quantitative analysis and a validation study, we find that data sets curated using Wikibench can effectively capture community consensus, disagreements, and collective uncertainty. Second, using the resulting data sets, we demonstrate how Wikibench datasets can help understand areas of AI alignment and misalignment with community perspective. Finally, through qualitative analysis of the interviews and discussions on talk pages, we gain insights into the ways how Wikipedia community members collaborate using Wikibench. And given the time constraints, I'll briefly talk about some of the highlighted findings and leave the remaining results in the paper. In total, Wikipedians curated 757 edits using Wikibench throughout the study. And as shown in this figure, the data sets curated in our field study capture a range of qualitatively distinct edits represented by the four corners of the plot. For example, the edits fall in the lower left corner are those with low disagreements and high confidence. These can be interpreted as clear-cut cases where labelers tend to agree with high confidence. By contrast, edits toward the upper right of this figure are ones with high disagreements with low confidence. These edits may be a consequence of inherent ambiguity regarding what label and edit should be assigned. This result suggests that Wikibench can help curate ambiguities and differences of perspective, which are crucial signals for making collective decisions. Next, we show that the datasets curated using Wikibench can help the community understand the gaps between their collective values and AI models' predictions. For example, in this figure, each dot represents an edit in Wikibench datasets projected onto a 2D space and color-coded according to their primary label established through community consensus. The two lines are the decision boundaries of the two AI models used on Wikipedia. This example illustrates how Wikibench dataset could serve as a benchmark for evaluating different AI models. During exit interviews, participants shared that Wikibench datasets allow them to easily compare what they believe versus what the AI believes and find patterns of mistakes of these AI models. Another interesting finding is that Wikibench provides community agency over the data curation process. For example, throughout the field study, participants collaboratively revised label definition to better capture emerging nuances and community norms. Here's a screenshot of the talk page associated with Wikibench's campaign page, where participants discuss and revise the label definition. Finally, we found that all participants submitted labels that exceed the minimum participation requirement, which involves submitting 10 labels per day for at least 5 days out of a week. And no one strongly dominated the label contribution. As shown in this figure, the bar heights represent the number of labels each participant contributed during the field study, and the color indicates the channel they used for those contributions. This result suggests that participants were highly engaged in the process and were likely intrinsically motivated to contribute. This is corroborated with participants' comments during their exit interviews, where they share the additional benefits they gain from participating in the process. In a longer-term deployment, these kind of intrinsic motivation could play a pivotal role in promoting broader and sustained participation. Overall, this work demonstrates a community-driven approach to AI data curation and makes three major contributions, including the Wikibench system, finding from a field study, and suggestion for future research as described in the paper with more details. One key takeaway from this project is to encourage AI researchers to consider more community-driven approaches to AI evaluation. We believe there is much to learn from Wikipedia for the design of effective community-driven data curation processes, given that Wikipedia is the largest, most successful platform for collective knowledge building and curation. We can discuss some of the future direction we have identified during the Q&A session. Another topic that might be particular interest to today's audience is the future of Wikibench. It will be great to explore how we can build upon Wikibench to help Wikipedians evaluate current or any future AI models used in Wikipedia so that the community can make more informed decisions about which models to use. Yeah, with that, I would like to wrap up the presentation, and please feel free to scan the QR code and read our paper.
Yeah, thanks for the great presentation. I was really interested to hear about the workflow that you designed as part of this. I know Miriam is monitoring YouTube for any questions, and maybe in the meantime we can open it up to folks in the room who might have questions. Invite you to unmute and
I can get us started. Thank you very much, Susheng. I really like this work. I think important to call out some really great things about it. I love the system building aspect. Like you all put a lot of effort into that. And it's really cool to see work that puts that effort into system building, and actually making these things functional, working on Wiki, that sort of thing. So I want to call that out because I really like that, excuse me, aspect of things. The question I had, you talked about these kind of different aspects that Wikibench can help with. One is just the like helping with the labeling, and I think that's great. You build an interface where this labeling becomes part of the actual kind of patrolling process, and so that there's no kind of additional, or there's very minimal like additional extra work. Maybe there's some labels that are generated that aren't necessarily exactly going to whether the edit gets reverted or not, but it's relatively minor. I wanted to hear more from you about the discussion stage, because that's a space where I think that is kind of more work, more time needed from editors. And I think there's this tension between wanting more of that discussion and curation, and at the same time, especially as we look at like other problems where the data sets that we're training these models on are really large. And it's this question of like, well, how much do these like individual labels actually end up affecting the model? So I wanted to hear a little bit more of your thinking around that discussion phase and where you see it as being most valuable.
Yeah, so there are multiple points. First, in this project, we focus on evaluation. We understand that for training models, like in recent years, it requires tons of data. So this approach may need some adaptation if we're considering for training. But if we're focusing on evaluation, it is sufficient to have a smaller set of data sets that is like carefully discussed and curated, and this can be reused across evaluation of multiple models. So in this case, it might be less of a concern for like spending too much time on curating data sets. But even within the context of evaluation, as you mentioned, there is a question about, oh, what are the additional benefits introduced when there are more people engaged in the discussion? So in the current design, we have, like on the campaign page, we have a huge table, and we have some simple buttons to sort the data that will be benefit from additional discussion. But we imagine that maybe in the future iteration, it would be helpful to like algorithmically to figure some ways to identify data points that will be most critical that need discussion. But this is something to be explored, yeah, in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, the benchmark speech I think is a really valuable point. I know I've been looking myself and doing kind of a survey of existing benchmarks for some of the aspects that are important to Wikipedia editors. And there's definitely some things around neutral point of view where I'd love some curated data sets of like, okay, here's some articles that maybe aren't doing so well on this particular aspect of neutral point of view. So I take that point well. I'll pass though to Pablo, I think.
Okay, so well, thanks very much for sharing this very relevant piece of work. Like I share everything that Isaac have said about these kind of approaches, and I see how particularly challenging can be like to incorporate like community-driven approaches into AI systems. So, and this is a recurrent discussion in the Wikimedia ecosystem, in the foundation, in our team. So I love the work that you have just said. So I saw in one slide that you are compiling information, like demographic information of the participants. And I don't know if you are operationalizing this information to control like the diversity. I'm asking that because like agreement is important, but I know that agreement is more important when it's across like diverse pools of participants or between people who have been historically in opposing views. And there are good examples of research in Wikipedia that show like high article quality sometimes are the ones who are written by people who have like opposing views. So I'm curious if you are considering like diversity here.
Yeah. So there are lots of design we can consider for managing disagreements. In the current system, we didn't like design something that's different from what's already there on Wikipedia. So for example, we basically encourage people to be bold in editing like the primary label, and we encourage them to respect other people's views and engage in discussion on the hot page if they have disagreements. So to answer your question, we didn't design something like specific for data curation beyond what's already there on Wikipedia, but we imagine that, yeah, as you mentioned, there might be some additional opportunity to see whether we can incorporate more of these design for diversity reasons.
Brilliant. Thanks again and congrats.
I'll go ahead with the YouTube questions then. Lots of love to your presentation. People appreciated that. The first question is about the next step for this work. The question is about whether you or other developers will continue to support Wikibench and what's the plan for the future?
Yeah, we would love to continue the work. So we are aware that currently there's a transition on Wikipedia about the machine learning infrastructure from ORIS to Liftwing. So we kind of want to wait until this transition is more stabilized and finalized so that we can connect the API that's more stable. And the second question is about what's the role of Wikibench given the deployment of the new infrastructure. So we are aware that the new reverse risk model is being trained on the revert history. And this poses a question about, okay, if those models are automatically trained on these reverts, what will be the best data sets that can be used for evaluation? And this can be different from like our current design. So yeah, to answer your question, we're still like waiting to assess what's the best next step for Wikibench, but we will definitely love to continue.
Thank you so much. And the next question is actually related to the infrastructure itself. So I think the question is around how does Wikibench relate to Liftwing, and whether you investigated whether there are correlations between their results. I imagine the models that are currently on Liftwing and the data that you have extracted here.
Yeah, so in one of the slides I showed earlier, this one, the blue line is the decision boundary for ORIS, the previous model, and the yellow dotted line is the one for the revert risk. And the arrow on the line pointing to a direction where the model predicts something as damaging. And as you can see in this plot, the reverse risk model is more likely to flag non-damaging edits as damaging. There are more research needed to understand why this happened, but we have a hypothesis is that because the reverse risk model is trained on the revert history, some reverts are reverted, not because of they're damaging to the article, but they may be reverted for other reasons. But this is not necessarily imply that, oh, one model is better than the other. It's like, oh, we can use these data sets to serve as a benchmark for any model developed in the future, and this can be iterated. The models can be iterated based on this benchmark. But again, as I mentioned, in this evaluation, because we didn't really, we are using the added damage as a proxy for evaluating the revert prediction of the revert risk model. So there are like some like inconsistency basically when we are directly applying these data sets. So that's going back to my answer to the previous question. We need to better understand how this model is going to be used in the future so that we can better design Wikibench around this infrastructure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And there is also a message in the chat about just love about how Wikibench operationalizes or try to operationalizes a fuzzy concept such as consensus. And, this representation of boundaries makes it very, visible. So thank you for, making this extra effort. I have one last question if we have time. And it is about the discussions that you see. So I think the nature of the discussions that you will see evolving around evaluating data points are very different from the discussions, for example, in 12 pages and Wikipedia. And I'm wondering whether there is any insights about this difference and whether we can learn something from the discussions that you see on Wikibench to see, how we can better represent data and data points to be annotated and add kind of extra information alongside the data point so that we can speed up decision making.
Yeah, so I think there are two major type of discussion. One is on the entity page that documents the label of individual edits. People will focus on discussing that specific edits. So people may look into the history of that edits to understand like the context and to determine whether this is truly vandalism. But sometimes the discussion on the edits, a single data point itself is not sufficient because it is related to like people's different interpretation of what vandalism is. So this is what I showed earlier about this page. So while people are discussing these individual data points, they realize that, oh, we actually have different interpretation about what vandalism is. So what they do is they bring this discussion into the campaign page, which is a discussion, which is a place to serve this like more meta discussion. And as a result, throughout this process, people iteratively refine the label definition we originally provided. There's actually a slide of the label definition that, let me see. Yes, so the line in the above is like the original definition we provide, and people iteratively revise this into something that they believe capture more nuances. So I think it is important to provide the community with the agency to shape these higher level decisions beyond just labeling individual data points, because this is not only beneficial to the quality of the AI data sets, but also based on what participants share with us, they learn a lot throughout this process. And this is especially beneficial to like some patrollers who have less experiences. And because they are able to see what senior patrollers rationale for labeling, they better understand like the rules and the different aspect of Wikipedia. So this is another discussion point I mentioned. Like it is like a way to like facilitate like collaboration learning. That's not only for the benefits of AI data sets, but also benefit for the human processes on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I think the label discussions alone is a really interesting topic, and I know we could go on discussing, and I'm sure there are other questions that are out there. In interest of time, we're going to have to transition to our next presentation, but Chusheng, just want to thank you once again for sharing your time and sharing about this project with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And with that, let's pass it to Yufeng, who's going to, as a reminder, present WikiContradict, a benchmark for evaluating LLMs on real-world knowledge conflicts from Wikipedia.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Let me share my slide first. I hope it's visible now. Right? Okay. Thanks for the invitation. So today I'm going to share with our recent work on creating a benchmark for evaluating LLMs on real-world knowledge conflicts from Wikipedia. So this is a joint work with my colleagues from IBM Research Dublin Lab and IBM Research Yorktown Lab. Right. So nowadays, Wikipedia is viewed as a high-quality pre-training resource for most LLMs. So here, I'd like to take one step back to say, how is the Wikipedia pre-training dataset created? So if we look at the Wikipedia dataset in Hugging Face, in the dataset card, it says Wikipedia dataset containing cleaned articles of all languages. So here, clean means the article has have been parsed using this parse tool called MW parser from hell. So here, I'd like to using a real example to illustrate how this clean dataset looks like. So here is a Wikipedia article called Chartreuse. It's a popular French drink. So if we look at this article closely, in one paragraph, it says the exact recipe of all the forms of this drink remain trade secrets and are known at any given time only to 3 monks. In another paragraph, it says, today it was produced using the herb mixture prepared by 2 monks at Gronder Chartreuse. They are the only ones to know the secret recipe. So Wikipedia added to notice this inconsistency in these 2 paragraphs and add an inconsistent tag here. So so far so good. However, let me just try to navigate to the next slide. When we use the Wikipedia parsing tool to parse these Wikipedia articles, and then we get this parsed text in the middle. This is a wiki text, which is a markup language, indicate all the tags we use to mark this Wikipedia article. Once we extract the clean text from this markup language, and then we get rid of these tags, including this inconsistent tag, which means such a inconsistent passage actually in the end will be ended into the LLM pre-training dataset. So to verify this, I did some search using what's in my big data tool released by Anna AI. So I searched 5 grams. One is only to the 3 monks. Another is 2 monks at Grand Chartreuse. So it turned out like both of these 5 grams occur in the popular pre-training dataset. For instance, Dharma from Anna AI. So both of the 5 grams occur multiple times in this training dataset. So with this as the context, so the goal of the WikiContradict benchmark is to create a dataset to evaluate the behaviors of LLMs with real-world inter-context conflicts. So in terms of the real world, the motivation is that we observe most prior studies to evaluate LLM knowledge conflicts using artificially generated data set. For instance, the original sentence we have like Dublin is the capital of Ireland. So normally researchers will replace the entity Dublin, say, as another entity of the same time, for instance, Galway. So we think such contradiction actually it's a pattern-based and then it's an explicit surface level that doesn't reflect the real-world conflicts. And another point is like in our benchmark, we focus to evaluate LLMs in the inter-context conflicts, meaning we focus on the rack setup in which knowledge inconsistency arise from the same or different retrieved passages from a single trusted source. Here is Wikipedia. So in the end, we annotate around 253 real-world contradict instances. They cover different types of the contradictions. All of these contradictions are identified by the Wikipedia editors and verified by us. So here I'd like to show you two examples. On the right side, example 2. So our annotation instance contains one question: how many monks knew the sacred recipe of chartreuse? And we have two contradict passages, and we have two answers, different answers grounded in in the corresponding passage. And we also annotate the contradiction type. In this case, the contradiction focuses on the numbers. It's a explicit contradiction because the contradict numbers is presented in the surface form. So on the contrary, sometimes we need to use additional reasoning to figure out why there's a contradiction. So this is shown as example 1 on the left side. In the example 1 here, the question is asking about how many survivors were there after this sinking event of a ship. So in the passage 1, it says there were 761 survivors. And in passage 2, it didn't mention this number explicitly. However, it says 1,195 of 1,959 people aboard were killed during the attack. So by doing some simple math calculation, we were able to figure out passage 2 actually express that there were 764 survivors. This number contradicts with passage 1. So therefore, our Wikipedia editors flag this. So we call this type of the contradiction as an implicit contradiction, which require us to do reasoning. All right, now I will talk about, give you more details about how we create an annotation pipeline to create this data set. So first, the source of our annotation is from the Wikipedia articles tagged with content issues. So here we focus 3 types of the issues. First is inconsistent articles. Second category is self-contradictory articles. Third one is articles contradicting other articles. So these numbers are as of February 2024. They are evolving every month. So with this as a starting point, we develop a pipeline, and then in the first step, our annotators need to verify whether this tag is valid. It turned out it's a non-trivial process. It's because half of the time, when the Wikipedia editors to add this tag there, they don't put the reason there. So as a result, when we verify whether this is a valid tag, and then we end up always spend a lot of time to read the article and also go to the editing history to understand in which context this tag was first introduced. So after we verify this is a valid tag, and then the next steps, our annotators need to copy paste the original passages from the same article or from the different articles, and also made some small changes when necessary. The main purpose is to make these passages stand alone. Oftentimes it involves to resolve the anaphors. And after this, our annotators need to choose a contradicting type here. So here we develop a contradicting taxonomy to describe this contradiction from different dimensions. The first dimension focuses on the semantic level. For instance, in this rounding example, this contradiction is about the number. It's on the entity level. The contradiction is about the number. And then in the second dimension of the contradiction, and then we use it to describe the modality of the contradiction, whether it's between text, or between text and tables, or between info box table themselves. And the third dimension of the contradiction, we use that to indicate whether this contradiction occur within the same article or it occurs across different articles. And finally, the fourth dimension is about whether this is a surface form implicit contradiction or it implicit contradiction, which requires to do the additional reasoning. All right. With this annotation pipeline, we annotate around 253 instances. Remember, each instances contain one question, two passages which contradict with each other with regard to this question, and then two answers that can be grounded into these individual passages. And overall, we have around 36% of these instances belong to the implicit contradictory category. Now, with this data set, we want to evaluate LLM's behavior. We develop an evaluation protocol. So we start with each individual instances we annotated, and then we have like 5 prompts to evaluate LLM's behavior in different scenarios. The first 3 prompts basically is similar as a sanity check. For instance, for prompt 1, we instruct LLMs to provide a short answer using its internal knowledge. And then the second and the third prompts, we instruct LLMs to provide a short answer based on the given context, but we provide them either with passage 1 or passage 2. And our focus on this study is prompt 4 and 5. For prompt 4, we instruct LLMs to provide a short answer for the given question based on the given context. Here, we concatenate these two contexts together, passage 1 and passage 2. And prompt 5 is an improvement on top of prompt 4. Here, we instruct LLM to pay attention specifically for the contradictions in the given context and give us a comprehensive view of even like there's a contradictions in the answers. So after we get the response from LLMs, and then we decide whether this is a correct answer or partially correct answer or incorrect answer. So since our definition of the like correct, incorrect, or partially correct is different from prior studies, here I'd like to say a few words about them. First, for the correct answer, for according to our criteria, the response is correct as soon as it identify and contain these contradicted answers that reflect a heterogeneous nature of the context. For instance, in this running example, if a LLM's answer is say, according to this context, the number of the monks who know the secret is either 3 or 2, the first statement suggests that there are 3 monks know the recipe, while the second statement contradicts this, stating that only 2 monks know the secret recipe. We consider such a response as correct. So for the partially correct response, it either only matches with only one of the answer, or it matches with all the answers, but it indicates a preference for one answer over another. For instance, in this response, according to the context, the number of the monks who know the secret recipe of chartreuse is either 3 or 2. However, the first statement suggesting that 3 monks know the recipe is incorrect. So the final answer is 2. So we consider such a response as partially correct. So finally, for the incorrect response is either the response doesn't match with any of the annotated answer, or the response merely combine 2 contradicted answers, and that indicate that both answers are possible at the same time. For instance, in this example, if we have the response, say, the number of monks who knows the secret recipe of chartreuse is 3 and 2, so which indicates it can occur at the same time, we consider such a response is incorrect. All right, with these definitions, we run a human evaluation for 5 testing LLMs. So for each testing LLM, we connect 55 evaluating, we connect responses for 55 instances based on the 5 prompt templates. So, so we calculate inter-annotate agreement between our annotators, given that every response is evaluated by 2 annotators, and we observe basically reasonable kind of like agreement score ranging between different prompt templates. So finally, we had a adjudication process. So we had a meeting to discuss any disagreement and then and come up with a final judgment. So at the end, we have like evaluation, our human evaluation for 1,200 answers from 5 LLMs. So we call this as a wiki contradict human eval dataset. So here are some of like our observations based on our human evaluation data set. I will give you some high-level messages. Overall, we observed that LLMs are struggling on wiki contradict like our benchmark. And first, when we look at the prompt 1 answer, so it's as expected. There's a significant overlap between the internal knowledge of LLMs and the context of the Wikipedia. And when we look at the results for prompt 2 and prompt 3, remember this is cases we only provide LLMs with a single context. There's no contradictions at all. So most of the LLMs achieves a quite reasonable high results for the correct category. Interestingly, we observed that GPT-4 falls behind to other LLMs in terms of answer questions for prompt template 3. This is because it often rely on its internal knowledge. It's kind of have like the stubborn behavior. It neglect the given context. And our focus is on prompt 4 and 5, and then we looks at the like correctly like the ratio of the correctly answer the questions for prompt 4 and 5, and we notice that all LLMs the performance drops a lot compared to prompt 2 and 3, and so we observe that Mistral model always try to attempt to reconcile the conflicting information by providing both answers, but then proceed to explain why one of them is incorrect, as I show you in the previous example. And when we look at prompt 4 and 5, we observe that interestingly, the model's performance generally improve for the correct categories. Which indicates that LLMs was able to follow the instructions given in prompt 5 to a certain extent. So next, when we look at like where does this improvement come from when we compare prompt 4 and 5, and we observe that most of the improvement actually come from the explicit category in which the conflicts are explicitly stated. So overall, LLM are still struggling to figure out the conflicts which require reasoning. All right, with this, finally, I'd like to share with you about some thoughts on future work. So one limitation of our current work is that we only focus on contradictions between text. So during our annotation, we observed that actually some contradictions occur across different languages or modalities between text and images. So here is one such example about contradictions across multiple languages. So we have a Wikipedia article for a well-known French writer. It says one of his novel appears in 1919. However, when we look at the French Wikipedia, it says this novel first appeared in 1918. So this is one example of like the cross-language contradiction. So the right figure on this slide illustrate the contradictions across modalities between text and figures. So in this Wikipedia article called Horsefield's Tarsier, and the text says it has this cute animal has large eyes which do not reflect light. So our Wikipedia editor add this inconsistent tag here. The reason is that it contradicts with the figures in the info box, because from the figures it looks like their eyes its eyes actually do reflect light. So another point I'd like to discuss is the data contamination. So since Wikipedia is viewed as a high-quality pre-training data set for LLMs, they have likely encountered most of these contradiction cases in our data set during their pre-training stages. And it's very challenging to instruct LLMs to rely solely on the given context and ignore its intrinsic knowledge when answer the questions. So therefore, it still remains unclear when the answer is incorrect and where do these incorrect answers come from for a given question in Wiki contradict. And finally, I think the most important part I would like to emphasize here is like at the end of the day, we need to figure out how should we properly handle contradictions. I think this is also can be linked to the previous talk. So overall, the factual contradictions are relatively easier to resolve on the condition that if the source of the contradiction is known, for instance, if we know somebody made a typo when adding the birth date of a politician in a Wikipedia article info box. However, when this editing is made, when other people look at this information later, and then it's very difficult to know how and why such contradiction occur in the first place. So for this, I think it'd be very interesting, for instance, to leverage the Wikibench toolkit to get more information about how our Wikipedia editors' actions in resolving these contradictions. It could provide us nice strategies about how to handling these different types of the contradictions, such as perhaps we should prioritizing information from the trustworthy sources while still maintaining neutrality. And finally, I think sometimes contradiction is an inherent feature for certain topics. For instance, different religions, they have like, according to their tradition, and then they have different definitions, like which date should be the first day of the 12 days. And in the scientific domain, and researchers have different opinions. And I think overall, for such topics, and we should disclose the full picture from different sources to the end users instead of like them prioritizing one over another. So with this, I'd like to conclude the talk, and more experiments and results analysis can be found in the paper, and feel free to check it out if you are interested in it. And finally, I'd like to thank my great collaborators again, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Thanks again for the presentation, Yufeng. Having done a lot of work myself on sort of translation on Wikipedia, I find the topic of this sort of cross-language and even cross-modality detection quite fascinating. I think we're going to start off with a question from Isaacs, who's in the room, and then move from there.
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. I was really excited you brought up the data contamination piece because I'd been thinking about that. And I wanted to hear your thoughts around like what would it take to automate this sort of benchmark generation so that, for instance, as new articles get added to Wikipedia and then new contradictions are flagged in those articles, those examples could be kind of extracted out and hopefully deal with some of this like knowledge cutoff, data contamination challenges. But I also recognize that there's a lot of there's a lot of curation work, a lot of important work you all did. So just trying to think through like, is this automatable? Like, what would it take to get there?
I think thanks for the great question. I think I've been thinking this a lot as well. So since in our work we didn't find like kind of solution to solve this issue, but I think one practical solution is like when we connect this data set and we know the time, there's a timestamp, we know at which timestamp this contradiction happens. And then in our data set, so once we associate each instances with these timestamps, and then once later when we use this like the data like these data points is to evaluate individual LLMs, and then perhaps if we know that like which training data set, like code points this LLM is using, perhaps we can kind of partially solving this data contamination issue, as well as we only using the new data points to evaluate that LLM. But having said that, so I think this only works for open source LLMs. For the closed source LLMs, we don't know like which pre-training data set they use. I think it's still a challenging research question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would love if more LLMs would report some of these knowledge cutoffs, because I do think that's a very salient point at the end too, which is that transparency is super important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yufang. I have a follow-up question related to the automation of part of this process. As you heard also from the other speaker, something we're thinking a lot about is using, implicit tags as the one you use at the source of your annotation effort, to basically learn automatically from templates and these kind of community assign tags and templates. From what I read from your paper, about quite a large number of the inconsistent tags were labeled as invalid. Is that the case, right? So and so I'm wondering whether exactly, yeah. So I'm wondering whether we can learn something from this, and if there is a way in which we can maybe clean the data semi-automatically so that we can more efficiently use these implicit tags and hopefully have, less manual annotation effort.
Yeah, thanks for the great.
Sense?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot. I didn't put this in one of the future work. I think one future direction is like, so it's a bi-direction, like the research topic, right? In one direction, we leverage these tags to help us to create a better evaluation benchmarks for LLMs. But in another direction, is like, how can we leverage the models to automatically check these tags or automatically flag new pieces of information, say this is a contradiction there, perhaps it worthwhile for have a human to give it a look. So I think that is a definitely, I think it's a nice direction. I think one should pursue as well. And then in terms of the specific info, I think looking at the annotation pipeline, I think half of our time actually I think was spent to verify with whether these tags are valid or not. I remember when I did the annotation for one Wikipedia article, it's very long, and then there's no reason why this is inconsistent tag. There's no reason to associate with this inconsistent tag. And this article has a super long history, like edit history. And then I spent a lot of time to look through this history to figure out why this is inconsistent, whether I agree with it or not. I think with this, this specific case, perhaps it's a good use case for the previous, talk in Wikibench. And perhaps this is a kind of the topic worthwhile for the editors to like work together, community work together to figure out whether this is consistent or inconsistent. After we collecting enough like such data points, perhaps we can use that to train a model to automatically to flag this, to give us reasons to help us to speed up this cleaning process.
Thank you, and looking forward to hear if you have updates on this. We're always thinking, as Isaac said, as making these kind of systems, annotation systems, also more scalable, so we can serve and evaluate more AI use cases, right? So thank you so much for the work. I have a question from YouTube. You mentioned looking at contradictions across languages, across modality, would the system that you have developed work for sister projects like Wikidata, for example?
Yeah, that is a nice question. So for the Wikidata, we haven't considered that. I think so at the moment in our annotation, when we encounter, say, the contradictions between text and tables or the contradictions between the tables, what we did is like we manually kind of like write a sentence to describe what's happening in that table, in that cell. And then therefore we kind of convert that contradiction in the natural language. But I think moving forward, it'd be interesting to say it's kind of like the way we convert this we actually give the annotation for the each like the cells of this table, and that serves as a tool to help us to explain why there's a contradiction. And then I think moving forward, I think it'll be especially say in financial domain, in tables, and then in Wikidata, in other format of this like this data representation, I think it would be nice to extend the current framework to cover say the contradictions in other data format. But I would I would like to hear about like this like the thoughts from the audience about like what are the challenges in that like the new data format such as Wikidata, and how is it different from the current format?
Thank you, Yufang. I'll monitor the chat to see if answers to your question come in. In the meantime, you're getting lots of love for your presentation as well. So thank you for sharing your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just make a quick call if we have maybe time for one more question from the room. Anyone want to raise their hand? If not, I think Miriam, you might have a question prepared for us to sort of wrap things up today. Is that right?
Yes, I can actually go ahead. There was one question from the previous speaker that is potentially applicable to both of you. The question is about essentially how often these data sets get refreshed, and you know, how often we can get fresh data. And it relates also to Isaac's question. We all know that Wikipedia is a project in continuous evolution. And so what is interesting maybe to hear from you is, you know, what is sustainable in terms of continuous data, or continuous, sorry, let's not exaggerate, but you know, releasing snapshot of this data that the every, you know, month or every time period, so that basically we keep evaluating large language models or other models that keep evolving. So maybe Chusheng, you can address like the real question that was about, you know, how often does this data get refreshed, and then we can think collectively about, you know, what is sustainable in terms of continuous data release for large language models.
Yeah, so I think from the perspective of Wikibench, the plugin enables this curation of up-to-date data constantly, as well as it's embedded within the workflow of the patrollers. So it gets like update whenever a patroller submits a new data sets. But more broadly speaking, in the past, people have been most focusing on like model-centric development of machine learning models, where people iterate on models based on a single data sets. I think it'll be interesting if we can revert this way of thinking, so we can deploy, like, as you mentioned, like multiple versions of the data sets and see how these models evolve over time. And this can, this is like framed as the data-centric AI development, I can share a paper in the chat that provide more details. Yeah, but basically, I think recognizing the fact that data sets is not static, but evolves constantly is something that's particularly interested to of what the Wikibench can achieve.
I think to add on top of that, I would think instead of release like some multiple versions, that is always, I think, I agree that is necessary. When once there's a milestone, right, we release a new version. When we reach the next milestone, we release another new version. But at the same time, I think when we create this like individual data instances, I think it's very important to associate a timestamp there. It's just to give a context, in which context we connect these data instances. And later, I think when people, they want to reuse these data instances, they can make their own choices according to their circumstances. And then they can create automatically, dynamically create their own version of the testing or training data and instances, like data set for their use cases.
All right. Well, I hate to sort of cut us off and move to wrap up here, but I want to be mindful of time. I just want to say a big thanks again to both our speakers, Chusheng and Yufang, for taking the time to be with us here today and share about some really interesting and novel examples that I think will have a lot of value to others, both in the room and watching on YouTube. And I think with that, Kinneret, I'm going to pass it over to you to help wrap us up today.
Thank you, Eli. And thank you, everyone, for joining us live for this Wikimedia Research Showcase and this very lively discussion. We have a lot of views today, so we appreciate you all. And I especially want to thank, again, as Eli mentioned, our speakers, Yufang and Xusheng, for all of your work and contributions. Also, big thank you to Eli, Miriam, and Isaac for helping coordinate this and making this showcase possible. Our next month's showcase in October will focus on external factors that help different language versions of Wikipedia thrive. So it does promise to be a very interesting showcase. We hope you all join us then. And until then, have a great rest of your day, evening, or night.